You know the story. Or, you think you do. A star, a manger, some shepherds. We all know the basics. But what if I told you the real story isn't just a sequence of events? It's a map, a high-stakes strategic blueprint laid out across a tiny, contested piece of land. We're about to trace the footsteps of a man who, get this, never traveled more than 200 miles from his home, but somehow managed to completely redraw the map of the world. Okay, let's get into it. Right, let's just get this out of the way first. From the very beginning, the story most of us have in our heads is kind of like a sanitized fable. The reality? It's not some gentle, peaceful Christmas card scene. It's a raw, political thriller, and it starts in a place way darker and more desperate than you've ever imagined. So forget the quaint wooden barn. His life didn't begin there. In Bethlehem around 5 BC, a stable wasn't a building. It was a cold, dark cave carved out of the limestone, and it absolutely reeked of animals. That was his entry point into the world. Not a palace, but the most overlooked, humble corner of a world that was, from the second he was born, totally hostile to him. He was born a king, but his first real title? Fugitive. You see, from the moment he drew his first breath, he wasn't just a promise. He was a political threat. His first few years weren't spent being adored. They were spent on the run, as a refugee, fleeing a paranoid monarch who was more than willing to slaughter children to protect his throne. And those wise men from the East? They totally miss the birth. They show up over a month later. And they don't go to some quiet stable in Bethlehem. No, they march straight into the halls of power in Jerusalem. And there, they walk up to the notoriously paranoid King Herod and ask a question that is basically a death sentence. So where is the new King of the Jews? Just like that, with one sentence, they put a massive target on the back of a newborn baby. To really get the level of danger here, you have to understand the man on that throne. Herod was a monster. I mean, a truly cruel and pathologically violent guy. So much so that even the Roman Emperor Augustus Caesar famously said this. Think about it. Herod had already executed his own wife and 3 of his sons just to hold on to his power. Some rumored baby king in a village nearby? He stood absolutely no chance. And so the escape begins. Tipped off by a warning in a dream, the family just vanishes into the night, fleeing for their lives. They become refugees, crossing the border into Egypt to wait out the storm. They stay there for years, waiting for this tyrant to finally die. And when he does, they make the long journey back. Not to some hero's welcome, but to total obscurity in Nazareth, a town so insignificant it was basically a local punchline. And then, nothing. For nearly 3 decades, the most consequential person in human history just disappears. He's wiped off the map. This isn't just a quiet childhood. This is a long, deliberate silence. It's a time of hidden preparation before he would finally step onto the world stage. For 27 years, Jesus is just a tecton, a builder, a craftsman. From his little town of Nazareth, he probably walked the 4 miles to work on the huge reconstruction of Sepphoris, a shiny new Roman capital. I mean, think about the irony. The hidden king is out there building palaces for the very empire that's going to execute him one night. Then, at age 30, he puts down his tools, walks 70 miles south to the Jordan River, and gets baptized by his cousin, John. And as he comes up out of that water, that 30-year silence is shattered for good. Okay, now the pace just explodes. After decades of total obscurity, Jesus launches this lightning-fast campaign across the northern region of Galilee. And this is not some quiet, wandering ministry. This is a targeted, high-speed spiritual revolution. Every revolution needs a base of operations, right? Well, Jesus chose the busy fishing village of Capernaum, right on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. It's from this strategic hub that he would launch a series of moves so powerful they'd attract massive crowds and the very unwanted attention of the authorities. And he moves with this incredible purpose, creating a circuit around the lake. He goes to Nain, to Bethsaida, out onto the waters of the Sea of Galilee itself, then back to his headquarters in Capernaum. Every single location on this map becomes a stage for an act that seems to defy the laws of nature. And the things he does, they just keep escalating. He literally stops a funeral procession to bring a widow's only son back to life. He feeds a crowd of over 5,000 people with like a handful of food. He takes control of a deadly storm and walks on the waves. But then he does something that was uniquely provocative. He heals a leper. Now, according to Jewish tradition, that was a sign reserved for only one person, the Messiah, the true Savior King. The message had been sent. This revolution was for real. So, after demonstrating his authority over sickness, nature, and even death itself, Jesus makes his most strategic move yet. He marches his disciples 25 miles north, way out of the way, to the foot of a place considered to be the most evil spot on earth. He's going there to make a declaration of war. I mean, what's the play here? If your plan is to build a movement that's going to challenge the very foundations of darkness and death, where do you go to make that big announcement? You go straight to the enemy's front door. He takes him to Caesarea Philippi, a city built to honor Caesar, filled with pagan temples, and this one terrifying deep cave that the locals literally called the Gates of Hell, a physical gateway to the underworld. And it's right there, standing on what was basically considered the devil's territory, that he makes this definitive claim. He says he will build his unstoppable movement, his ecclesia, and that the very gates of hell, all the powers of death and darkness, will be completely powerless against it. It was a direct challenge thrown right at the feet of evil. So after declaring war on the gates of hell, Jesus now had to prove he could actually defeat its ultimate weapon, death. Which brings us to this number, 4. 4 days. That's how long his friend Lazarus had been sealed in a tomb. He wasn't just sick, not unconscious, he was decomposing. Raising Lazarus from the dead just outside Jerusalem, this was the point of no return. It was his most public, his most undeniable, and his most threatening miracle yet. The news spread like wildfire, and for the religious establishment, this was the absolute final straw. A man who could call the dead back to life wasn't just a problem anymore. He was an existential threat to their power. He had to be killed. The final week of his life is so often seen as this story of tragedy and defeat. But when you look at the map, you see a completely different story. This is not a retreat. It is the final, brilliant move of a master strategist. This is the calculated capture of the enemy's capital city. Inside the temple in Jerusalem, the very heart of the nation, his opponents challenge him one last time. And his response is the most direct claim possible. He doesn't just say he's a prophet. He reaches all the way back through the centuries to Moses at the burning bush and takes the sacred, unspeakable name of God for himself. I am. For everyone listening, this was the ultimate blasphemy. He was claiming to be God in the flesh. They immediately picked up stones to kill him. And this just brilliantly shows the stunning irony of this whole geographic journey. The story started with a search for the King of the Jews, a title that put a target on his back as a baby. Now, 33 years later, that exact same title is nailed to his cross, not as an honor, but as the official crime he's being executed for. The search was over. But the crucifixion wasn't the final pin on the map. Not even close. On the third day, he reclaims the whole board. He appears alive, back at the Sea of Galilee, right where his revolution began. He leads his followers to the Mount of Olives, the hill that overlooks the capital city he just conquered. And from that exact spot, he ascends, leaving them with a promise from an angel. He will come back to the same mountain, in the exact same way he left. The entire story, from a dark cave to an empty tomb and a promise on a mountaintop, is a blueprint written across this one tiny piece of land. His life was a tactical conquest of territory, and it all culminated in a victory over death itself. And the map he left behind leaves us all with one final massive question. If he promised to return the same way he left, what does the final chapter of this geographic blueprint even look like?